All right. Well, we're ready to go, Mr. Mayor. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. We're still figuring out, as I say every time, we're still figuring out these meetings and what they should be and how to keep them orderly and moving along and all the stuff like that. But we want them to be conversational and casual. I'm Alan. This is Jonathan. That's Janice. And this is Josh. And this is a great time to have conversations. And thanks for coming. And donuts, coffee, bathrooms over here. We typically do a 3-minute clock. But oftentimes there's multiple times you come up and it's very conversational. We're just trying to keep it from where it's not like a 30-minute screaming match
With one person.
Yeah.
So.
And so we're just trying to keep it orderly. But whoever wants to go first, does anyone have any other opening comments about town halls and then oftentimes we'll just have conversations about things that we're working on and just have discussions. So, and we're live streaming as well. So whoever wants to go first.
And we do record it, when we put it up online. So you don't have to give your address because this is an official meeting, but we do just ask for your name so we know who we're talking with. So
yeah, whoever wants to go first, just go right ahead. Come on, Brian. I know Brian or Tim has to do it.
The town halls are for the folks, and the workshops are for the elected officials. So this is your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
I
Brian.
like your shirt. Good shirt.
Thank you, Brian Garman. So today what I wanted to talk about was, as a citizen, we see a lot of the road work going on, and that's awesome. Love it. There's also some frustration, of course, that comes along with that. So my question is what is our kind of incentive structure for the contractors to get these done on time? My uncle is a mayor at another smallish town, and I asked him, I said, well, how do you get contractors to do their work on time? And he said, Brian, easy. Liquidated damages. So I just wanted to see, what's our philosophy on liquidated damages? I assume we have them, and do we pursue them? How often? And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to kick that off. What's our incentive structure for the contractors?
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So, we do technically have liquidated damages. It's in the contract. Any extension of the contract past the due date, the contract shows the time of the estimated contract. But I've been back home now 4 years and in this role about 18 months. And it's my understanding that probably for the better part of 1 or 2 decades, we've never actually executed liquidated damages. So instead, we try to, proactively work with the contractors and determine what the issues are. We have a project management team that is literally in the field, either as a project manager or our own CEI team, which is the construction engineering inspection team, that literally are just working hand in hand with the contractors each and every day. Making sure that everything's built accordingly to the plans, and with our specifications, and so in any type of delays that pop up, it's almost like the city is organically engaged with and part of that process. So I know the only project that really took extra long. That really exceeded it probably was the Harrison Avenue Streetscapes Phase 1. But that wasn't all on the contractor. The city, I think, from what I understand and what I witnessed in that time as the logistics director, is we kind of as a city pushed a false start. Like we weren't really ready to hit enter on go, but we did anyway with kind of the kicking off of the project with the kind of the laying of those initial pavers and all of that. But then there were still, I think, 60 plus days worth of plan revisions that needed to happen, and then none of the structures had been ordered. Typically, when you give a notice to proceed, there's some time has elapsed after the commission has awarded the contract in order to order all the materials, to order all the structures, and go ahead and get that supply chain going. Because no contractor is going to order all of that until they know the commission gives the thumbs up to move ahead with the project. And so that can take 60, 90, 120 days, depending on what type of structures or the materials. So I know that was a factor, plus the complexity of the soil cells. The actual connection of that system was very involved, and we did have an abnormally heavy rainy season throughout 2022. and even into 2023 to some degree. And so, but most of the other, contracts are, very specific, and we work hand in glove with them. So, but the answer to your question is we do have liquidated damage is an option and a tool for the city, but we've historically not executed those.
I want to add a couple similar type questions. A lot of this job as an elected official is like it's like customer service. You're bringing things that you're hearing in the community and bubbling them up into this building, saying, "I'm hearing this thing." And so, I'm not the procurement expert. Josh has been a lot more around that department than I have, and obviously Jonathan from previous public works director. But what I hear, and I love to just, because these are things that I hear, I want you to answer them as well, is why can't they work? Why don't we have night crews on things? So in your experience, why don't we have night
Yeah,
crews?
great question, because it will make the project a lot more expensive, because then they have to bring in extra crews. They end up having to hire 2 sets of crews. And if you work overnight or on weekends, you're entitled to overtime. So in order for the contractors, just like city employees, whether you work for Delta Airlines, I imagine your businesses, sir, if you have employees that regularly work over 40 hours, there's overtime and all that, so it makes it that much more expensive. So that's the main reason why we don't do it, because it requires pretty much a second set of crews, and then at premium payment, because you're either working overnight or you're working on the weekends.
If you've ever heard it's like a freelancer's pyramid, is that what it's called? Where it's like good, faster, cheap.
Yeah.
You get to pick 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
So if it's fast, a lot of times it's not going to be cheap or it won't be good. The other thing that I hear a lot of is there are certain vendors that we have that the citizens feel like have not done projects well for us, and they should be put on like a punishment list, or even though they may have the cheapest bid, they have some sort of scoring that reduces their ability to get as many contracts. How do we, I don't know much about that.
Yeah, so, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every single contractor has batted 1,000 with every single project, because that would be dishonest. Nor has any city staffer or any elected official done everything perfectly and without mistakes.
Why are you
And
looking
so,
at me?
except maybe Commissioner Lucas. And so, that being said, though, I would have no problem, if I felt that, that a contractor had done like such a bad job and really failed to deliver, and they were the lowest responsive bidder, and there was another one that was kind of maybe close, I would have no problem if I felt strongly about it, giving those options to the commission and sharing my concerns, but that would be the commission's decision to make. But I know that you would really want to have clearly documented, examples and show that we communicated during the project why we felt that work by the contractor was unacceptable and did not really meet our standards. But again, after serving as Public Works Director and now City Manager for about 18 months, there's really no one at this point that I would, feel that strongly about, where I would encourage the commission not to take the lowest responsive bidder. So, plus I know that would probably make our city attorney nervous to suggest such a thing as well.
We're in shorts today too. Look
Yes, so he can speak to it too, because there are state laws and issues that drive that as well.
Nevin Zimmerman, City Attorney. Two issues that came up. That's a great question. The first has to do with selection of consultants or engineers primarily. There's something in state law called the Competitive Consultants Negotiation Act. And so that gives you a lot of discretion when you select an engineer, because price is not to be considered until after you determine who the best is. So when it comes to consulting engineers, the city commission gets to determine who the best is, and you can look clearly at past history, problems, any issues that have come, and then that factors into that determination who's best. When it comes to lowest bid, it's not quite as subjective. So if there is, some communities have a process where contractors are evaluated, rated, and if they actually score low enough, they're prohibited from bidding. Once you allow somebody to bid, it's very difficult to then decide, oh, well, I didn't know you were going to be the low bid. Now, let's go look and see if we have a problem with you. You really need to make that determination on the front end and decide this particular contractor, we've had the following 10 problems. We are going to make a finding. The city commission says you cannot bid for a year, 2 years. I mean, some period of time. So it's not left to, well, maybe they won't be the low bid, and so we don't have to tell them how bad they are. You make that determination on the front end, and then the commission could decide you cannot bid. We do have a process if we're in litigation with the contractor. The bid can be awarded, but it has to go to the city commission. So it's a great question, but it's important, especially with the low bid situation, that it be determined prior to the bid.
And would you speak to the low bid? Why is it that we have to take the low bid? We can't just pick and choose the one we like.
Under state law, and especially we've been going through a lot of FEMA projects under federal law, it's the lowest and best bid. Now, to determine what is best, sometimes you look and see if they're responsive and all, but it's still not really it's not that subjective. But state law federal law requires, if we're using federal money, obviously anytime we have state grant money, it's the lowest bid. And if contractor can meet all the bid specs, which is provide a payment and performance bond, then it's they can bid, and if they're the low bid, that's who's accepted.
Nevin, to that point, have we ever called someone's bond in the last 10 years?
I do not recall ever calling anybody's bond with Panama
So
City.
when we talk about performance of a contractor on a project, is there a post-mortem that we do of like, instead of like waiting till they bid the next time, we go, I remember like last time they did a project, we didn't like the way they handled this. Is there like a post-mortem review where we have a scoring, like?
Yeah, well, we definitely don't do a scoring, but again, because like the way we execute these projects, they don't just kind of go out there by themselves and then come back when they're done. Like, because we're literally embedded with them every step of the way, it's almost like it's a continuous ongoing postmortem. So whenever a particular issue or something that we're not happy with pops up, it's really dealt with right in the middle of the project, like on the go, because we're there. Now, after when there is a kind of the punch list kind of closeout meeting, we have that, and some of the bigger issues might be readdressed, but really what we do is address everything like on the spot as it happens, and so it's not really something we would like hash all back out again at the end, in some type of formal document.
I would say I've gotten multiple times frustrated over however many years with delays or things like that. But what you'll find is when we sit down and try to go through things is, what are the things that are beyond a contractor's control? Weather. So they can use that as an example of why a timeline gets extended. Maybe something in the engineering wasn't calculated for, an undocumented manhole, some other underground condition that wasn't documented. That is another reason why they may be legally entitled to an extended timeline. A change, going through the process, and staff initiates a change order to a specific design element, especially in our historic areas where they're like, we've got to fit in a water meter here or something like that wasn't calculated for in the original design documents. So it's very difficult to get to a point on liquidated damages. Now, do I think we should have a stronger process of evaluation? I do believe we need that. And that's been something we've been talking about internally, is how do we get to an actual either recap, evaluation, or some kind of closeout process like Jonathan was mentioning, so that we can actually keep a stronger accountability moving forward. You can't change the past, but you can have a lot of effect on the future. And And so that's how you can build the best process possible, because liquidated damage is very difficult to prove. And if you look around the state, how many times that actually happens is very, very.
Well, and
very
if we're
few.
not documenting the review or some sort of post-mortem, then the information that happened on the job leaves with the staff that leaves. Like, they leave and you're like, well, this
Oh, yeah, no,
that historic information.
it's all captured in the
How
system.
many from phase one are left in the staff team that were on that first project?
Well, the project manager and the CEI guy are both still here, and they're heavily engaged with phase two.
But overall, design engineers, all of those other
It's all the
things.
same, actually, believe it or not, for yeah, so.
So I'm thinking Johnny, I'm thinking,
Okay,
I'm going through.
He wasn't the design engineer, he was the public works director, but Metric Engineering did the design for both phase one and phase two. Ms. Suzanne Mandel was the project manager, and Mr. Darren Whiteley is the CEI inspector on behalf of the city. Those have all been seamless through both phase one and phase two. We just changed contractors. So obviously Royal American did phase one, and now CBC Construction is doing phase two.
So that wasn't managed by PMO or anything?
No, this, phase one was paid for by Surtax, and phase two was, since it was CDBG, the PMO was somewhat involved in some of the early planning around phase two. But, I worked with, then as Public Works Director, I worked with Mr. McQueen, and we all agreed that Public Works would take lead on phase two, just given everything that, again, Ms. Mandel and Mr. Whiteley had learned on phase one. So they kind of stayed through that.
So maybe that's a poor example,
Yeah.
but to Alan's point, you have the chance of losing that historical
Correct.
knowledge if
Yeah,
you don't, if it's not documented.
so that's why, like, so many things are documented with reports and and I don't know the name of the system. I tell people I don't know how to initiate checks. I don't know how to initiate a PO. So, I don't have my hands on any of that stuff, but there is a particular type of communication system for project management where the contractors and the public works staff and the design engineers all regularly communicate to document the request for additional information, change orders. It's all very specific. And to Commissioner Street's point, yes, that has been a huge issue that has really impacted, probably even more so than the weather, is all the surprises that we have found digging up stuff that's been in the ground 60, 70 years, especially on Harrison Avenue. When we found a couple of fuel tanks, we did not find the infamous tunnel where supposedly deceased individuals were moved underneath Harrison Avenue. I know people were disappointed we didn't find that. But utility lines that weren't on any kind of system that.
That pulled up one in front of history class. It was like
Yeah.
a lightning bolt that pulled the wire up.
Yeah, and it was like supposed to be on the other side of the street. And we've definitely experienced that. Commissioner Granger's aware of this in Venetian Villa, where that neighborhood, the very far west end, was actually designed with everything underground. I don't know if it was I think it was probably in the 70s, maybe late 60s throughout the 70s. And that has been a huge challenge with Florida Power and Light, who used to be Gulf Power, all the communications companies, and even our own utilities, because all that stuff was put in the ground really before computers, at least the type of computers that we needed here locally. And so it's literally giant plans they bring out and lay across the table to kind of show where things are. And so that has been a real challenge, not really having what we call the as-built, which is after a project is completed, we put records in the system that show exactly how it was built, changes made in the field, and all that is documented. So you'll kind of hear that term, and that tells future folks exactly the way something was done, so that when we have to do a repair in hopefully 20 or 30 years, the guys and gals that are starting to dig it up know exactly what they're digging into.
It's a great discussion, and so it sounds like, and this is kind of doesn't click with what I see, but maybe I'm wrong. It seems like what you're saying is that we don't have a problem with people overrunning contracts. I mean,
I think that's a fair statement. I mean, again, I'm not going to say that they finish it exactly on the planned date at the beginning of the project, but because the city has both construction engineering inspectors and project management team embedded daily and hourly, each and every day of the project, we really are addressing every single issue hand in glove with the contractor as opposed to just kind of say checking in, oh, it's the last Friday of the month, how's it going?
Right.
And just having like 93 things that we have to kind of deal with.
Sure.
They're literally hitting them all like, kind of in the huddle. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just be curious as the actual percentage that finished on time. I mean, that's interesting. And then kind of circling back to what one of my initial points was, is that, well, okay, if we can't use liquidated damages because of XYZ, shrug your shoulders, we've never done it in 10 years. I feel like it probably shouldn't be in the contracts then if we're not going to pursue it. But what is the incentive structure that we can build into our projects going forward? Because we've got a ton in the queue, and if we have, let's say, even if we allow a 5% bleed over, right, that 5% is going to cascade and multiply over these hundreds of millions of dollars of projects. And is it possible for us to build in incentives where I hate to say the word bonus, but like if you finish X% ahead of time, where you can qualify for bonus payment, something. Because if there's no pressure pushing the timeline forward, then the only natural way that it can flow is outward, and that's not what we want. So anyway, I mean, I know that, as a contractor, right, I've bid on a lot of, my company bids on a lot of federal work. We build in risk, right? So you got to say that those contractors are going to build in weather, they're going to build in risk of unknowns underground. So some of that's going to be built into their cost. And I mean, I just feel like if we just kind of shoulder shrug every time that something comes up and go, all right, you can have whatever time, again, then our incentive structure we're building in is not on for our benefit, it's solely for theirs. It's just an uneducated opinion, but anyway,
Yeah.
for discussion. Thanks.
I'd be supportive of contracts that incentivize people to do great, fast, efficient work as well. We all want
Yeah.
that.
Well, you have the time value of money that plays in as well. If time is money, then speed is profit. And so if they are kind of self-incentivized to get done faster. If they execute that contract without a lot of, dragging out certain aspects of the project, then that's going to work to their benefit. So.
Yeah, I think to Jonathan's point, and I think that's a good illustration of it, is, if you've got X amount of equipment that's sitting there demobilized for an additional 6 months, that's 6 months you could have been making money elsewhere. We don't give them additional money for having equipment sitting there not being used. And so there is this piece that does incentivize the contractor to move faster, because ultimately they can't mobilize anything else until they're done with this one. And that has come into play multiple times, where a contractor has gotten very frustrated. They haven't been able to complete a project because they've got equipment and they've got people that are tied up, and there's no recourse to come to the city and ask for more money. And so just because they ask for more time doesn't mean we give them more money. And so,
Yep.
like change orders that are underground conditions or things like that are respected, that might result in a change order, but it doesn't automatically result in more money. So
I mean, I can't like specifically speak, but I know very generically at the macro level, I know that there are absolutely been certain aspects of change orders that staff has been like, yeah, no, we're not agreeing to that. Yeah, we agree to that. We don't agree to that. So, just know the change orders that we see, any that I might approve, or if it's above my level, then the commission would approve. There was probably other attempts and they were told no. So I know that's the case on multiple projects.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
So on the maintenance side of it, like grass cutting and cleaning ditches out, do y'all have a regular schedule of where it gets done? Because usually, things doesn't get done until it gets bad and I send a picture. So like ditches, like this ditch down from my house, the trees have already grown back in it, and it's right there by Lucille Moore, and the trees are hanging over the sidewalk where the kids walk to school, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So prior to Hurricane Michael and prior to COVID, the city and the county both heavily relied on prisoners to do a lot of the work in the ditches and in the right-of-way, some of the work release type stuff, and that all went away. Our right-of-way mowing crew right now is, like 15 guys and gals. And during the height of the mowing season, we just don't have enough staff to really hit everything as much as we want. There was a report that was done a few years ago by the former city manager and one of the senior staff on Public Works. They kind of like a right-sizing report, because the ask was, hey, how do we go out there every 2.5 or 3 weeks and really hit all the right-of-ways and really hit all the ditches? And it was like we would need like 90 people on that team from, say, March to October during the peak of that growing season. And so they do have grids that they work in, and there's certain high traffic corridors, sidewalks, and the ditches on that they really try to get on, but and stay on that plan. But the challenge is that when it rains, it kind of throws them off, and it may rain in the morning, and at that point, it may take a day or two, for the ditch to dry out, and then, so they kind of circle back to that end. It's really difficult, in a lot of ways, especially with some of the ditches, because, it's also an equipment issue, and we have made some recent investments in some of the automated mowers that can kind of get down in that area. We've tried to do with some of the major ditches through the area where there is, where it needs to be cleaned out by equipment. We've created kind of like the flat plains on each side of it, so the equipment can get through there and easily dig it out. But we recognize a lot of the ditches, you really just have to get in there with almost like either a push mower or a weed eater. And that is very heavy, labor intensive. And so that's a challenge. But we do, regularly have, we have a right-of-way kind of like technician that's regularly out there, plus myself, the elected officials. When we see that areas, are maybe growing faster than some of the others or have been neglected, I will engage with them and say, hey, I know you're probably got this cycle going, but it looks like this particular area is maybe worse and has been a little bit longer. So let's kind of work that into your plan. But the truth is, really, the ditches are one thing, but really the right-of-way space, really, and this is the way it was mostly done. Again, I'm from here, but I've lived in other places. Really, right in front of your house and right in front of your business, even though it's the right-of-way space, really, the civic support would be for folks to kind of just help take part of, what's right in front of their area. And if we ever come in there, recognizing that you've helped maintain it and we tear it up for a utility repair, we're going to put it back exactly the way we found it. That is our city policy for both city staff and for any contractors that might need to do that. But that is the challenge. Is the short answer is that in the heart of the growing season, especially when we have a lot of rain that throws off the schedule, and the fact that we have 15 to 20 people to really do that across the whole city, when we really need almost 90. To kind of hit it every few weeks, that's really just the challenge with it, with the ditches.
So beyond a cosmetic need of just like making things look neat and tidy, the ditches, if they're overgrown, they don't flow as well.
Correct.
And we start flooding. And so one of the questions I had for Jonathan, and I want him just to mention it here, is like, hey, a hurricane's coming. What do we do as a city? Let's say there's one out in the Gulf spinning around 3 days out. What are we doing as a city to prepare ourselves for like 12 inches of rain, 24 inches of rain?
Yeah. So it depending on, what is forecast, but we have standard procedures before we have any tropical weather. Even if we're expected to get, say, just abnormally heavy rain for a few days, we do have a few key corridors as far as our watershed and kind of where the water naturally goes. We automatically lower all of the big tanks at both wastewater treatment plants. We draw those down. We have a couple of storm ponds that are strategically placed around the city. We draw those down in order to accept maximum flood and rain waters that come in. But honestly, there are certainly, I don't want to say there's not a lot of, there aren't some challenged areas in our city. A lot of those have been addressed, a lot of them over in Commissioner Street's area, kind of over near Lucille Moore and over near the city's utilities plant, or utilities building and complex over at 19th and Beck. You know, a lot of those houses have been torn down. Those were some real serious issues. But for the most part, a lot of the city, again, not all, but a lot of the city was really built, you know, up on the high grounds. And so unless it's a flash flood or a true like tropical event, our city does very well for the most part in handling, you know, type of rain. But no stormwater system is designed for flash floods. Because that would be just astronomically expensive to build it for maximum. So typically you will design a stormwater system, whether you're adding a road, whether you're developing a piece of property, commercial, residential, solely on, solely on some of the average rainfalls that you'll see. And that's why we require, civil engineers to provide a site plan, because we don't want to create any adverse offsite impacts in the design of a project. But there are a number of things that we do to prepare the city. We also will strategically place out sandbags for people to use, and we give those out both on the east side and the west side of town if folks want to come and grab some of those sandbags. We have a few city facilities where we where we will kind of put those out too if there is expected potentially a little bit of heavier than normal rain. As well as putting out signage in areas where we know that certain roads are likely to flood. And the one that jumps out the most to me is honestly it's Beach Drive, which that's the state's issue. They're kind of near Big Mama's in Chevron through that stretch right there. That one. But it's usually when it's high tide. So if we have high tide and heavy rain or a flash flood, that's when some of the challenges happen, because the city system was built to kind of handle that. But there are a number of areas where, if we have high tide and we get a flash flood at the same time, that's when you start seeing some of the challenges.
I'd like to get communications to a point, and we're trying to add some horsepower to that department where storms coming in and we share, it could be the exact same video of like, we know a storm's coming, here's what we're doing. And just reassures you, because I'm a citizen too, and a lot of times you go like, are they even doing anything? And then when something happens, you're like, they didn't even do anything. And we are. And just saying, hey, here's what we can do, but also check your neighborhood storm drains. If there's debris in it, we're looking too, but let's just pull the debris out so there's not a clog. And even being proactive, hey, you got lawn chairs in the backyard, flying projectiles, let's bring those inside now. So, us getting prepared, but also you getting prepared.
That's one thing, and we know it looks nice, but really pine straw, we're trying to set an example as a city, but it's one thing for it to be way away from the road up against your house, but flower beds right along the street, we're trying to get away from mulch and pine straw, because when it rains, that stuff washes out and ends up in our storm drains and clogs them up. And so, we ask people to be mindful of that. Again, as you're closer to the road, and that's another reason why. And we did do a video on this and share it, but I still see it all the time. People will mow their grass and take probably just 2 bags of lawnmower, clippings, and just dump those right on the side of the road.
Which is really bad for the
Which is really bad, because you might as well just go dump that right in the storm drain. Grass clippings and loose leaves should really be either put in your blue cans or should be bagged for the claw truck to grab. And the claw truck is really meant to grab big things like giant limbs, or couches and appliances and those type of larger things. So so we would ask that, of course the growing season is kind of coming in for a landing, but March and April will be here before we know it, and it'll come again, and we'll remind folks. But if you see your neighbors or family or friends that help spread that word and say, hey, just the city has communicated this, you might have missed it, but really, and it doesn't matter if it's a giant pile, because grass clippings and leaves are still very loose, and it's very easy for those to wash in and fill up our storm drains. And interestingly, we actually have vacuum trucks for both stormwater manholes and for sewer manholes, and you can't use the stormwater one on sewer, because when we suck things out of the storm drain, we're able to more flexibly, we can put that, back into the bay, because most of it's just rainwater. But anything in the sewer has to go to one of our 2 wastewater treatment plants. So we have the equipment available for that, and they do regularly go around and clean it out. And it is mostly, almost always filled with leaves, grass clippings, and pine straw and mulch that someone probably paid a lot of money to use. So
Jonathan, you made mention, going back to the very first part of the question. So you said we have 15 right-of-way crew members,
it's 15 to 20, yes, sir.
15 to 20, but you said the need is 80. So what is
Well,
the city's,
Oh,
what is the city's plan on being able to build a process that that addresses, both right-of-way maintenance, ditch maintenance in a more timely manner than obviously, and you know this, like I have to initiate a lot,
Yep.
and I'm sure the other commissioners do as well. And so what is kind of the forward thinking on long-term? Obviously, the ditches aren't going to go anywhere. The right-of-way is not going to go anywhere. What are some things that we're looking into that might help in this category? Because obviously hiring another 60 people probably isn't realistic to do in a single
Correct.
budget year, but obviously we can't just leave it as an issue for forever.
yeah. So we've got a couple of options that we but those aren't going to fit in every single area. But one thing we can do is, and we've looked at this and we've kind of tried out a little bit, but it's the concrete canvas. So we identify certain ditches and you go in there and give it a really good cleaning, and then you lay down this fabric and hose it down, and it creates almost like a concrete ditch. Now the challenge is that's still going to collect dirt and residue and has to be cleaned out, but it's not something that has to be, to necessarily growing as quick. The other issue is maybe in some of these medians, and this is kind of what the county's done, is they've gotten away from the manicured look and are moving more towards like kind of wildflowers and to that end, I know that some of y'all have, elected officials have talked about that too in certain areas where it doesn't require quite as much maintenance to that end. But again, I think, as far as, really having everything look, I think we have to ask the question, and I think that's what prior leadership was trying to answer, is how often do we want to maintain these type of, the goal was, hey, how do we, like every 3 weeks? So basically, twice every 6 weeks, we're kind of coming through there and hitting this. And it was like, okay, to the commissioner's point, okay, well, we're not going to hire 70 more people to do this. So then it's, okay, well, with the resources that we have, how can, so we have certain areas that are prioritized. We do strategically use contractors to kind of come in and supplement. But when the resources are limited, sometimes those contracts have to be pulled aside. We, again, trying to make some of these ditches more long-term where they don't need as much maintenance. That's something we're working on doing. We also do try to engage and encourage. And when we see that people, this is one thing we try to do, when we see that people do kind of take a level of civic pride in front of their particular area, we make sure that we express our appreciation for that and thank them for helping and partnering with the city that is all of our city to help maintain it, because that allows us to keep our expenses low and not necessarily again building some giant team. And the other challenge is even if the city said, hey, yeah, Jonathan, you can hire 70 people from March to October. It's really hard to find people that want to, get in the middle of the summer in a ditch with a weed eater for $15 an hour. And so I think that knowing that it's also only temporary, I think that's a challenge too, to that end. So hiring people temporary, I mean, that's kind of a challenge too. So I think, I don't even know that would actually be a solution that I would put forward.
I think I'd draw attention to some of the other ideas that have been shared, like Greenville and what they utilize, which is kind of funny, and you may laugh at it, Jennifer, but they use goats. Like once they have a whole goat week, and they bring in goats to trim back stuff
into their parks,
into their park stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, geez.
I think the other things is like making sure that people that own their property are actually maintaining it at the standard, so the city can focus on what the city, what's the city's responsible to do.
And thank you for flagging Greenville, I think in a lot of ways, the Panama City, both elected officials and staff, and even just some folks in the community, we've got some connections with Greenville. Former Commissioner Halligus' father was an elected official in the county up there, and I know Mayor Branch, before he became mayor, met the mayor of Greenville, and they've developed a professional friendship over the last, I think, 10, 15 years. And so we've gone up there and trying to learn. And the thought is kind of we are today kind of where they were 20, 25 years ago, kind of the late 90s coming into the 2000s. So they're about twice the size of us. So they're about, 75 to 80,000 people. They got less than 20 parks. We have almost 60 parks.
Yeah, it's like 5,000 acres of parks that we have. So one of the things that you're going to see hopefully this fall is we're having initial conversations. We're in our third or fourth meeting with St. Andrew Bay, St. Joseph Bay Estuary Program, and the UF Agriculture Group. And there's also a native plant nursery. Sam is her name that owns it, and working on a way to reduce mowing on parks with natural grasses and wildflowers and things, and even on our dead-end streets of how do we handle our dead-end streets in a way that the bay appreciates and that doesn't feel unmanicured and doesn't create sleeping spots for people, but also makes you feel invited to the space as well. And so you're going to see that program. We're going to start in the garden club of just reducing the mowing capacity. And then hopefully that program grows and builds, but we're like on our third meeting and everyone's very excited about the ideas and the collaboration as well. So, yes, ma'am.
But it's the thing about the ditch there by Lucille Moore is very wide and it's very deep. And y'all came out a few years ago and dug it all out, and it looked nice and clean. Now you got trees growing in it again. So now you're going to have to get another excavator to come out there and dig all of it out again. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll flag that for the guys. So,
Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
morning.
Morning, Jonathan. I'm Andre Goverick. I'm a homeowner with my wife on 102 Allen in the Cove. And Jonathan, you may know me from the dumpster issue, Mayor Branch. We've
I won't just associate you with the dumpster issue.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're almost there. I just wanted to, thanks for having this open forum. It's a good thing for the citizens to be able to come up and talk about this
Absolutely.
mundane kind of thing. Sorry to bore everybody. So I first want to say thank you. Although it was not our first preference to have the dumpster container or enclosure put on the city's right-of-way across from our property, our first option would have been for the Bay Club community condominiums to take responsibility for their own trash and put it on their property. But with that step aside, it's been a year-long process, and I see that something's up. But I just wanted to get the status on that, because the dumpster's still on the right-of-way, but it's not in the container or in the...
I'll have to check on that. I don't know. I mean, it should be. I thought it was almost done, so I'll follow up on
Yeah.
that. I mean, the post and the wood should be up.
Everything's in, it's
Okay.
painted.
It's painted? Okay.
Bollards are in, it's
It's
just not...
Probably just, we now need facility maintenance to
Okay.
tell Public Works, hey, tell your driver he can move it.
Sure, okay.
That's the last. Thank you for flagging that.
Yeah, no problem. And then I just, on the dumpster issue, I just wanted to ask, will the city make available the cost and terms that were put in place with the Bay Club?
Sure, I can tell you that right now. It was, I want to say approximately $4,500, and they're going to make those in 12 equal payments, starting with their January 2026 payment. Now, how they assess that inside of the Bay Club, I don't
Sure.
know. They get one bill. They have one master meter for the whole condo, and so they're paying 100% for it.
Perfect.
So, yes,
All
sir.
right. Thank you. And then we came in right on the tail end of your talking about the beautification. So I wanted to ask what the procedure for that. My wife and I and some other residents were thinking of maybe beautifying that around that area on the right of way. Do we have to submit plans? Do we create a little neighborhood network to take care of it and manage it, or?
Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
even
no,
more.
we welcome that. What I would say is, Miss Stacy Roush is our city engineer, and she has the responsibility for any right-of-way permit or any right-of-way work. So honestly, if it's something that, kind of laying out what you'd like to do, the city would just kind of say, hey, that looks great, and we would just give that blessing. So
Great.
I think that's great. We appreciate that very much. I know one thing I'd like to do there, which is kind of, here's one question. Is the gate up as well?
No,
Okay, that might be the holdup.
I
then.
see, okay.
Maybe that's it. So the gate is the last thing. So I'll check with our foreman over facility maintenance. That's the last hanging chad is to install the gate.
Got it.
And so once that happens, that'll probably be what moves it over. So I'll find out. But one of the things I want to do is limit when bulk trash can be put there.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you use that area as well for
Well,
bulk
yeah, I
trash,
wanted-
which I
yeah.
think is appropriate for the record.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that was my next topic here was, I want to just get some clarification on what, the claw truck there, because the Bay Club seems to have 2 locations for claw pickup. I don't know if that's
Where would
acceptable.
the second one be?
Well, there's one right out on Cherry, right, and kind of in front of the,
Tide place almost.
all to the left of that.
It's just across the
Okay,
little side
yeah.
street.
So, I prefer they use that one, of course, but.
Yeah.
But I would like, we're, in our beautification plans, that would have to build in something where the claw truck picks up. But more so, I'd like to define what the rules are, and then what the enforcement mechanism is for. Because if the claw truck, here's what happens all the time. There's mattresses, couches,
Some of
toilets.
it's out.
They come and they put it out if the claw truck comes on Monday, they put it on Monday night. And then we have to sit and look at this all week long.
It's worse than that.
Yeah.
Andre, I'm convinced that they wait and watch the claw truck
Sure.
pull away.
Yeah.
We had the same problem with the towers here downtown.
Oh.
So this is what I put in as Public Works Director, and this is what we're moving towards with Bay Club Condominium, is number one, identifying an area. It's challenging to put it on Cherry Street because we don't want people, and we're trying to educate folks along Cherry Street. We don't want large items put on the multi-use path on the south side, and I see that. I see people piling stuff up on it. That really should be on the back side of the multi-use path because the claw truck can reach it, and then that way people don't have to step off into the road, to go around that type of debris. But what we did here downtown with St. Andrews is, so St. Andrews, the St. Andrews Towers, their pickup for the bulk truck is on Wednesday. So the rule that we put in with them is they're not allowed to place anything out to be picked up until after 1 p.m. on Tuesday, so that it doesn't sit there for an entire week. And you can imagine with the towers, there's often furniture and mattresses. Those are probably the top 2 things. And it's probably similar, with the exception of you're going to see a lot of yard debris, I think, as well, right there, because I think some of the neighbors use it too, which, again, I think is totally appropriate. So we're going to probably put up some additional signage very tastefully that limits when the pickup can happen. And then I'll communicate that to the Bay Club, and that'll be upon their, so they will need to, hey, if I'm going to throw away a mattress and I'm a resident, I know I can't take it out there until, I think it would need to be either Sunday or Monday, because they try to they start on the east side and they move, and so that pickup is Tuesday for the Cove. And so I would restrict it, they can only put it out on Mondays. Monday morning, Monday afternoon, and then it would get picked up on Tuesday. So that's what we're going to do in that area. Now,
That
the
would be
question,
excellent.
the question is enforcement. Then.
Yeah.
So if and our foreman for both the trash, which is the claw truck, or the garbage, the foreman regularly drive around, as does the superintendent. And if we see that that they violated that, then there'll be a penalty that's put on their water sewer garbage bill in that month, and that's what we've had, with kind of a stipulated penalty if they violate that, and then they would have to pay for that. So
If I could, 2 things. One, I'm going to have to leave a little early because it's Go Knowles Day, so in Tallahassee. But one of the things we have discussed is doing an on-demand roadside pickup, and what that would require is when you put something out by the side of your road, you would call a line and say, hey, I've got something for pickup, rather than doing this standard every two weeks and people come
Every
illegally
week.
every week,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And, it could be something that we look at either doing. One, we reduce our garbage rates and let people do it by charge when they pick up, or it could look like, hey, look, we're just on demand at this point, and that way we don't have stuff sitting in the right of way for multiple weeks at a time, or a week, or those kind of things, which is what I experience in my neighborhood. We have 2 collection pickups that the neighbors we complain about all the time, and we're not even really 100% sure it's just people in the neighborhood.
That's one of the issues.
It's just people driving through, throw something out, and then they drive off.
Well, in our situation, the dumpster sitting out on the right of way looks like a city dump. So
Yeah.
one of the strategies was the enclosure with, this is I think we talked about the signage, tasteful signage, that this is Bay Club's
Yeah.
dumpster, private dumpster, so that the people, just other people from wherever that just come through. But I think I guess the mechanism of enforcement, I mean, I get it. Is there a number to call, or do we just call? Or, a lot of times they're doing remodeling or they're doing something and they just,
So what I would say is, yes, we're going to put the signage on the dumpster. The
Yeah.
dumpster is only for Bay Club condominium residents. But then the area we're going to designate for bulk pickup, that, to me, you have every right to use that area as well across the street from your house. And we'll note when it can be dropped off. But in the event that, there's stuff not there, you would call the solid waste division and flag that for them, and then our team would come and document that. Now, the problem is, we may not always know who did it.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah,
And so,
sure.
so
yeah, and I don't want to be
They
like
may be like,
just
"We don't know who
Kravitz
did
out
that."
there
Yeah.
with my camera, That's not the intention. The intention is to just have I guess what I look at is have a signage, have a solid policy,
Yep.
and then be very clear with the condo association that they disseminate that information to their residents, and then we just they try to be good neighbors, and we just try to
I'll
create
suggest
neighbor
this,
peer pressure
yeah.
if they're.
I'll suggest this so that the elected officials aren't the ones suggesting it. If I were king for a day, I would eliminate all bulk pickup in the city
Yeah,
and
you said that.
instead take those resources and create like a transfer station and request people to bring the big stuff there, and then our crews haul it from there somewhere very convenient in the city, maybe even an
Right next
S
to your
side
house.
and a west side. Yeah. And then we're the ones that haul it to the landfill. And that's what I had in Virginia. And if
Yeah.
you were a
Yeah.
resident of the county or city, the yard debris was free to drop off.
Yeah.
And then anything else was like, I think I paid like $14 for a full truck to
Sure.
drop it off. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
something like that I think would be great. Then that way you get away from giant piles of debris that end up in our storm drain or always lit up the road. You get away from mattresses and appliances and furniture.
There was a boat trailer left on Cone Avenue by
Yes.
the dumpster,
Yeah,
like a 20-foot long boat.
With
trailer.
like the tongue like missing. So
Yeah,
it was
sure.
so it wasn't like you'd be like, well, I'm just going to haul this off. It's like even if someone
claw
wanted
truck-
to take it.
Yeah, the claw truck couldn't even pick that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And I want to touch on, it's funny getting into the seat, but also living downtown, we moved to consolidated dumpsters. It used to be like, you look down Laverne and almost everyone had their own, there'd be like 12 dumpsters. And we consolidated the dumpsters and everyone's like, I don't want it by my place, but I don't want to walk far either. And then you have a new person come in and they don't break their boxes down and they fill the dumpster up, or they throw pallets in there, or, all kinds of, or they throw theirs on the very top and it falls out when it gets dumped and it's all over the ground. Everyone's like, well, that's not my trash. And you get these moments whenever people come together and people aren't as thoughtful and caring when they look at these spaces, or they're in and out, especially if you're moving. You're like, I'm not here anymore. I'll just leave this here. So anytime you have a shared space, whether it's a park, a public restroom, or a dumpster, you're going to have moments of inconvenience, and it'll never be fair. Like just like my history class, I told my employees, you see trash on the ground, I don't care if it's ours or not, pick it up.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do in a community. And there's always going to be someone who's not thoughtful and not
Sure.
appreciative of it and just
Yeah.
not fair.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to touch on is it was almost like dumpster gate 2 weeks in the code. There was like 3 dumpsters. Everyone was mad about where the dumpsters were. And I have yet to figure out, because
Are you talking about our blue ones, Mr. Mayor, or the roll-off
the
ones?
blue ones.
Okay.
Yeah. And everyone was upset about where the dumpsters were and people leaving stuff by them. And I've yet to figure out a way to notify, because really the problem was the neighborhood didn't know about the dumpster and didn't have voice in the problem. But even as a mayor, this week on the agenda, there's an item about downtown and awnings and things in the sidewalks. And I'm like, I own property on Harrison Avenue and I'm the mayor and I didn't even know it was happening. And like, I wanted to be a part of the formation of that idea. And I've yet to figure out a way to be able to say, oh, what are the phone numbers in this area because this problem's happening in this spot? Who wants to weigh in on this thing? And so we've yet to figure out how to citizen outreach beyond just a spreadsheet of names. In business, you would have a customer relationship management tool. and you would tag them with certain things. And so I just have yet to find that tool or find a path for that. But that is something I've personally experienced as well. Of like, I didn't know that was happening. Why'd they ask me? And I'm the mayor. You know, I'm like, this week on the agenda, I was like, what about this? Why did no one ask me about this? And so I feel that it's not a good feeling, because it's always like, hey, I care, you know. So that is a problem we're tracking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
My name is Daryl Weiss. I'm a downtown resident in this area. What I wanted to ask about is, and I've mentioned this to Alan a couple of times on our morning walks, is what's the immediate future for the marina and what we can put down there? Something comparable to what's up on Florida Avenue with the kids' playground equipment and the exercise equipment that's up there. Is that a possibility? Is there a pot of money somewhere that we can tap into?
Yeah.
We're all looking for that.
Yeah,
pot of
something
money.
like a passive, like just in parks in general, or even on the marina, having like passive exercise equipment. Like you see like ellipticals that are meant for
Right.
outside.
So we have that already been delivered for Bay Memorial Park. I keep wanting to call it the Garden Club, but that Bay Memorial Park, and so that'll hopefully be installed in the next 60 days. Once we redo Joe Moody Harris Park, we're also going to plan to put the equipment there, but there is no plan for that on the marina.
well, there's
We're-
no plan for
there's
there's
no-
no formal like
yeah, there's no
there's
formal
no
plan
there's no
for it.
room in this building that has plans for the marina that you haven't seen.
Yeah.
We're
There-
still working on what happens.
There's lots of concepts. I would have no personal objection. I think the city's goal is to get the slips built as soon as possible in both basins. That's going to be about 220 slips-ish between both basins. Getting the promenade, kind of what you see around Hotel Indigo and Harrison's Restaurant. We want to extend that all the way around it. Those are, I think, those are kind of our two primary desires with the marina. But we're in the middle of negotiations with City Marina Partners, who responded to a request for proposal to be basically a P3 with the city on that. And so, I mean, I think it would be great to do some type of exercise equipment or on the promenade, maybe eventually when it's done.
Totally. It's always a thing of like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's some sort of person that's anti-exercise equipment,
Yeah.
but it's always like what will people use, whether it's a slide for kids or a bench or an elliptical. And so,
I just think it's a good venue to bring
100%.
people downtown.
I walk it every morning. I mean, I see you, it's beautiful.
Yep.
And so and it's actually 1 mile, almost exactly the perimeter. Exactly
If you
1 mile.
start at Destination Panama City and all the way back to, I guess, kind of there at Laverne and Government Street.
I know it's asking too much, but it'd be nice if it was paved around the T.
That's what, when I say the promenade, that's what we're wanting to do.
Yeah, and so what was the estimate yesterday?
It's about $2.5 million to extend the sidewalk, the railing, and then provide lighting, like more permanent lighting all around the perimeter. So again, I know that in talking with all the elected officials and senior city staff, that is our primary focus and desire is the wet slips and the docks built back, the installation of the promenade all the way around the exterior of the T-dock, and then obviously enhancing and enlarging the boat ramp because the commission is committed to keeping that there. And just as a side note, we actually, we went for a grant with the state to enlarge and enhance the boat ramp. We weren't successful. But we did sell a piece of property over near Snug Harbor in Millville because that extra parcel wasn't needed as we built out Snug Harbor. So we sold it, but it had to be used for the marina because it's it's an enterprise fund or protected fund for that. And so we used that to fully engineer the enlargement and enhancement of the downtown boat ramp and almost 50 boat trailer parking spots with better flow over there on the east side of the old Civic Center. And while we weren't successful with the state actually shared this last week with the design engineer and our Parks and Rec team that, hey, that was, such a good application. They believe it's a good candidate for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And so we have submitted that with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to try to get a grant to do that. And we hope to hear back from them in February or March whether or not we were successful in that bid. That's probably a $2 to $2.2 million project. to rebuild because we're gonna make it larger. We're gonna have kind of like two up and down, two ramps, very similar to what you see at Snug Harbor, as well as the appropriate docks and floating docks all the way around it, so that they can be ADA accessible as well.
Who's responsible for the trash pickup on the marina and the dog feces stands? Who's responsible for that?
Our Parks and Rec, yeah, the city's responsible for that specifically through the Parks and Rec Department.
Even the ones near the, like Harrison's, there's a dog stand there. That thing-
No, there is a chance that Harrison's might have put their own up on the other side, so I would have to check. But no, our guys go out 7 days a week and check all of the waterfront parks, like starting at Calhoun Park, looking at Asbel Park. In fact, they check Asbel Park twice a day, and then also make that drive around the St. Andrews, the downtown marina. Yeah. We don't quite do as much at St. Andrews because it's under construction right now, and we have an agreement with St. Andrews Marina Partners, and they're doing a lot of the maintenance right there. But there is a dumpster I know we pick up.
There
at
used
St.
to be
Andrews.
blue cans out there, which I think helped. And Disney actually has a study where it says if you don't have a trash can every 12 feet, people just throw it on the ground. And I have a theory of people typically will walk further if they don't see any other trash, but if they already see one or two pieces, it's like, it's already happening. And they throw that. And you and I walk, I said the same thought, like, why is there trash out here? But you and I walk at like 6:30. At 7 is when the staff comes around.
They're 7 to 3.
And I started walking later. And so they come, especially Monday morning. So people have been fishing on the marina and hanging out there. And there's lure bags, there's, line laid out, and beer cans and all kinds of
Yes.
stuff.
Please stay inside till 7 a.m., Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, exactly. When it's cleaned up.
Yeah.
But I had the same thoughts of like, this should be prettier, it should be kept up better.
But are y'all saying the blue cans aren't there anymore?
Not there anymore.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. I
There
will
used to be
find out
4
why.
out on the tee dock. and a
Yeah,
couple more.
I'm not aware of why we got rid of that. That was a mistake.
Last comment, could you just give us an update on the Beach Drive walking path?
Yeah, go for it, John.
Oh, wow, okay. No. So okay. For those that haven't been following, so the city got a state appropriation for about $8 million to build a sidewalk kind of connecting St. Andrews to Panama City, to downtown Panama City. Back in the day, there was a boardwalk because St. Andrews and Panama City were two different cities.
It's a big update.
Yeah.
Going back 100 years.
Yeah, going back 100 years.
Not back in our day.
Yeah. So, Well, yeah, nobody's here. So maybe Nevin. Mr. Zimmer might remember that one. So, no. And so we got appropriation to do it, and that was all kind of approved and put in motion with the subrecipient grant and all that. And the problem is it's not really a grant. It's a state appropriation, but they're executing it financially like a grant because the state agency has to provide oversight over that. And so all that was kind of put in motion in early 2023 and in kind of like February and March. And then in May, former city leadership had an idea, which I think was a good one, as part of the project, not solely tied to the project, but as part of it, requesting that the state transfer certain parts of U.S. Highway Business 98 to the city. So that includes Beck Avenue, which I can tell you right now, the businesses and folks in St. Andrews have wanted probably for 20 plus years to have Beck Avenue transferred to the city so that the city can have more control over it. We can create a social district and all of that. All the way down that 10th Street, Chestnut, 9th Street, little part of Frankfurt, and then Beach Drive, back to 6th Street there at First Baptist. The request was made, hey, can you transfer that to the city? And we got verbal approval from FDOT. They even sent back a map and said, here's what we're proposing. We went to that went all the way up to the federal highway folks. They signed off on it, and then it came back, and there was some. I'll just fast forward over it. There were some concerns within FDOT, and they ultimately decided not to transfer us the RIP. And they really only verbally communicated that to us, but they have indicated verbally that they don't plan to transfer the road. So rather than us simply building a sidewalk project in our own right-of-way, we now, it's going to continue to be the FDOT's maintenance right-of-way and then a combination of our platted right-of-way along West Beach Drive on the south side. So now, because they're not going to transfer the road, we have to get a right-of-way construction permit from FDOT. And they've looked at the plans that we've designed, and they want us to modify them. But before I direct the design engineer to spend another penny to modify those plans, I want to hear from FDOT exactly what they're going to let us do. And we're still working through that. And there was a recent, there has been some recent changes within our district of Florida Department, and I'm sorry, I said FDOT, that's Florida Department of Transportation. The district secretary retired a couple of months ago, and there's a new district secretary, and we had a tentative meeting scheduled with him yesterday. But he had to last minute go down to Miami, so we're hoping in the next 2 weeks to sit down with him and kind of get us all on the same page.
He's
so that
from
we
Bay
can-
County. He went to Mosley.
Well, no. I'm talking about the district secretary.
District, yeah.
But
Jared.
he's from Chipley, so he's suburbs of Panama
But
City.
Jared Purdue is the
Yeah,
guy in
the
charge
head,
of FDOT.
yeah, the head secretary of all of FDOT in Tallahassee is a Bay County son, and he has interests. I think there was some some concerns raised by, say, like Chevron and some of the larger vehicles on the road, and that's another issue. I know that some of the residents on Beach Drive weren't supportive of the project and had concerns, but they've long since wanted us to maybe narrow the road down a little bit and slow it down and reduce some of the larger semi-traffic. But I think where it got confused is folks thought that those two were connected, the transfer of the road and the project, when really the project came, it was an afterthought to, hey, maybe in this process, let's transfer the road. And that's not going to happen, at least in the short term. I do personally still believe that for the long-term interest of the city, given what we want to accomplish in St. Andrews, I know there's strong, I wish Commissioner Street was still here, but I know there's still very strong support to kind of create more of the golf cart, type community, the social district in downtown St. Andrews, very similar to what we've done here. But when you have a state highway through the, through the middle of the area, you can't really just like, hey, we're just going to do what we want here. We have to get their permission, and there are restrictions as it relates to anything outside of special events. So that's the challenge. So hopefully to get the project kind of back on track, kind of determining it, but because they're not going to transfer the road, and not really let us narrow it, then that does modify the path a little bit. And so we'll look at that. I still personally believe that there's 26 plus feet across Beach Drive. Probably back in the day, there's pictures, there used to be parking on one side of it. I'm talking 100 years ago or 90 years ago, there was kind of parking along one side. And so when they came in and eliminated that, you have wide lanes. And the truth is, the lanes on Beach Drive are wider than they are on 98 and 231. And so even if we don't modify the lanes at all, the city's view and request to FDOT is we still at least lower the speed limit to 25 miles an hour. I pull out on the Beach Drive every day, and there's regularly people doing 45, 50 miles an hour down that road. I would like to see long-term, probably more like 10, 20 years, but I would love to see it have more of an iconic residential feel, get rid of the big wooden telephone poles and the wires, and put in more like lamppost lights, and with a great walk. It can still be a connector road. People can still drive east to west on it, but really,
slower.
but just slower. Yes, ma'am. And then and also enhance the walkability for people to enjoy that stretch. Oak trees and kind of almost, if you think about like driving through Eufaula, I'd love to see and that's still a major road right through Eufaula, but you still have this, iconic, beautiful road that has less of a U.S. highway feel and more of a larger connector road inside of a residential community. That's kind of what I'd love to see.
Yeah, change is emotional.
Yeah.
Emotions don't follow logic a lot of times. Government is slow and clumsy, but caring and nice people and all the things, and frustrating at times. As part of what we're hoping to do is, if we do get a reduced, if we're not going to shrink the lanes, our opportunity to do a wider path on the south side gets reduced, much smaller to a sidewalk or sidewalk-esque. But it leaves us an opportunity to go to the private landowners. The city does own some of the waterfront, but there's also private owners. And again, we're working with St. Joe Bay, St. Andrew Bay Estuary, University of Florida Agriculture, and we're going to be approaching those owners saying, hey, I know this is your private property. will you allow us to restore back the natural grasses? Will you allow us to plant natural trees back? Can we put, a little 4x4 post with a rope that says private property? Can we make, standardize some of this stuff and beautify it, add signage, those sort of things? And because what we have now is people carrying people who have removed some grasses. Now the sand's blowing in the road, and people planting sod under good intentions, but they don't realize what fertilizers do to our bay. And we just want to show them what it can be. And and this isn't the last attempt. Maybe one day someone else tries to do it again and reroute the semi truck somewhere else. Off of coastal.
Yeah. I would just add, and we acknowledge that that there is a challenge into and out of downtown Panama City for vehicles. It's really more than even the fuel trucks. I mean, we have a lot of businesses downtown, and so I mean, even the city, we sometimes have large deliveries, and so every downtown in America has a designated commercial truck route into and out of downtown. It's not something that's unique to Panama City. Everybody has to do that. And there have been, we monitor the accidents along. Commissioner Street is actually listening, and he texts me. He goes, "Oh yes, they still want Beck Avenue for sure in the St. Andrews community to become a city road, so we have more control over it." But the number of accidents, we see as again wide lanes. No stop signs, people kind of zooming down that. And so we want to work long-term, on identifying a much better truck route into and out of Panama City. So we've committed to Chevron, we've committed to the other businesses. Hey, listen, here's a map. Like, you draw it into here, and we will modify curb lines. We will modify the markings to give wider turn radiuses for them to again get into and out of Panama City. And I'll just add, there's also a huge environmental component as part of the beach drive, and we still want to do this. There's about 16 or 17 outfalls along that stretch of Beach Drive. We want to go in and put in the bay savers, and we had one here for a couple of months in City Hall, which would catch a lot of the trash and the oils and the debris and the runoff from the road. Right now, it just washes right into the bay. This would catch that, and I mentioned the stormwater vac truck. It would come through, once a month or twice a quarter and vacuum all that out, and that's the stuff that doesn't end up in the bay. And so we still want to work on that. We still feel like that should definitely be a part of this project. Because again, that with also adding in a net gain of 110 to 120 trees that are more native through there that don't require as much maintenance. That was another thing that we were committed to. So we still want to do those, even if we have to have a narrower sidewalk and stay within, the state's right of way. That if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But we still feel that the environmental and the landscaping component is critical to the overall health and long-term stability of that stretch.
Give people a vision. Even truck routes are important. If you can visualize Frankfurt and 15th Street, there's a Safe Glass new repair center. That curb there has been destroyed by semi trucks trying to come down Beach Drive, turning on from 98, headed on Frankfurt, headed south, and it just destroyed. And so they need a real truck route that's off the bay, that's easier for them to make their turns because they have a business, and we're not throwing Chevron under the bus.
No, absolutely not.
What's interesting about that facility, I had no idea. The gaskets were found in Pascagoula. It's one of the 3 facilities in all Florida where gaskets truck to Dothan and Columbus, Georgia. So you can imagine all the Chevron gas and how they would be it's hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for them and how important it is. And they need a safe way away from people, away from school zones and railroad tracks where they can get in and out of here.
It's important to our community, and we would never want to do anything to harm, sustainable commerce into and out of our downtown corridor. And so we're definitely committed to that. And, we'll see what happens, but we remain committed to it. And there is, the desire is to eventually connect the 2 marinas, for pedestrian, connectivity. So we're still, hoping to do that. So, yes, sir.
Hey guys, good morning. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to change the subject.
No, please.
All right, that's what we're here for. I didn't bring the baby for a prop, but she's the noise there.
Oh, you're good.
I need a little help with environmental services.
What's your first name?
Chris. Sorry, Chris Karagianis, 1314 West 30th
Oh, you don't have to
Street.
give us your address.
And also 1310 next door.
Yeah.
There's the old Frito-Lay building behind. I'm on Lisenby, right off of Lisenby there, the old Frito-Lay building right outside of Sweet Bay. There's dumpsters there from the flooring companies and whatnot. I've had an ongoing back and forth with environmental services for probably 5 to 6 months now, and I keep getting passed around to a bunch of different people. They bring in the garbage truck comes in there, and I understand picking up garbage is a nightmare anywhere, but it comes in at like 4 in the morning, 4:15, 4:30 sometimes. And now to the point where I spoke to Christine, I spoke to Chad, I spoke to Robert Nix, and I finally got to Shane Doherty. And my issue is that I keep getting passed around to person to person to person to person. And one person's not resolving, the next one's not, the next one's not. I finally lost my cool about it the other day, got a hold of Shane finally, and they all knew about it, but nobody addressed it. Yeah. I don't want to just complain without trying to give a solution. I think the solution would be is to have less steps of communication to the drivers. But going back to what we said about accountability, a ticket system would be incredible. I don't know how far along that is or where that is, but anytime I called, they said, oh, we don't know anything about it. But then when I finally lost my mind the other day, because they showed up at 4:10 on Labor Day morning, which I understand, trucks have to run, we got to get garbage out, but I just asked if they can come in after 7, because when they slam that dumpster down, that baby starts to go.
Oh, they do it all downtown too. I
Yeah.
thought somebody wrecked into my home.
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
what-
oh my. And then I thought, are they slamming these on purpose?
And it was tough.
It's
enough
the lid.
with the construction.
I thought it was them hitting the ground. And then I
So-
went out there at 4 in the morning. I was like, what is it? It's the lid.
It's the lid that
Yeah.
smacks, and then when it finally goes down, it shakes, and I'm only
Oh, yeah.
50, 60 yards away. So I did get an email from Mr. Shane the other day. He did talk me off the ledge about, screaming and yelling and all that nonsense, which I shouldn't have done anyway, but I felt like that was the only way I was able to get a response. But if there's any kind of support, we can say, hey, anytime after 7 p.m., if you could just take a different route, come back in there a little later, because the rest of the neighborhood, I mean, there's a few other houses in there. They don't, I tried to get them to sign a letter to send over. They didn't want to get involved in anything. I'd love to see them come in just a little bit later. He did send me an email saying that he spoke to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the foreman, the manager, and everybody else. But if a new driver jumps in that truck and just sees that that's the route and it's not addressed, then I don't think that they know to do anything different. So, again, I hate being a complainer in a world of so many good things that's happening with new administration here. So I'm a single dad now, so waking up with this baby at 4 o'clock in the morning is not the easiest thing in the world. So if there's anything we do to help try to enforce it with them, and look forward to seeing some sort of an accountability or ticket system, because it's what changed my business for me was, you can call this person and they say they'll take care of something, and it doesn't exist. It just flies out in fairyland. So
Yeah, and software, which is what I do, support ticket, and this is how most software companies work. If you email the software company, it comes in as a support ticket, and they go, oh, they test it, that's a bug, and they make a ticket for the developers, and developers leave comments on it, and it says status inactive or active or being worked on, and it gets done, and then
Right.
so you can track it along the way. And for me, a lot of times I'm throwing a problem for Jonathan, and weeks later I'm like, what about this thing? And he's like, oh, we already done it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where's the? And so I'm always asking for updates on stuff, and I'm like, I should just be able to look. And I haven't found the same thing goes with like a CRM tool for communicating to us. I don't know if there is one.
So a couple of things. So if I'm understanding, the issue is purely the noise.
it's just the
At that
noise and
hour.
that dumpster getting
So,
smashed down.
We've actually got a kind of a trial thing we're doing right now over in Landmark condominiums. So very similar condos, people sleeping, and it's 100% residential, but it's a commercial dumpster. So we got 2 plastic dumpsters, and they're not as loud. The loud part, believe it or not, is actually the arms into the metal part on the sides, and as they shake it, that's the loud. And then when they slam it down, that's the loudest part. The lids are plastic already, but the whole dumpster is plastic. Now, there's twice as much money. A normal dumpster is like $900. These are like $1,900. And so the question is, we're kind of trying to see how much, wear and tear they take. But I think one of the issues is we do have ticket systems with like utility projects, but we really don't need one for the garbage, because it's a set schedule. Like you don't have to request anything. Like if you live from Balboa East, every Monday and every Thursday, we're going to pick up your blue can.
Right.
Period. Hard stop. Every road. If you live west of Balboa, every Tuesday and every Friday, we're going to pick up your blue cans. Hard stop. Every single day or every single schedule. So it doesn't matter if you have one trash bag in your can or whether it's overflowing. It happens every day, twice on the east side, twice on the west side.
Right.
Additionally, the claw truck, every single week, once a week, they drive every single road in the city and pick up everything on the block. So there's no reason to call in and take. So, but if there's an issue like this, that is, first off, you got to Shane Doherty. So, I mean, he's the senior manager of operations for
Took
all
me 5
things.
months, but I did,
So
yeah.
he's the right guy. So what I'm going to talk to him about is, I don't know how many dumpsters are back there, but this sounds like a great idea. Assuming that the plastic ones are holding up okay at Landmark. We've had them there for maybe 3 months now, 2 or 3 months. So I'll ask him kind of how those are holding up. But maybe we target, an area where if we know we have commercial garbage cans up against high residential areas, maybe we look to change those out to plastic.
That'd be great. You
yeah.
know, it's a flooring business, so they put
Yeah.
boxes and stuff in there. So
Yeah.
boxes don't always come out, so
They're shaking it.
some
That's what they're
fibers,
that's what
and
they're
it's like-
shaking. Yeah.
Oh, we hear it
So
all
that's
from Larry, like 2 blocks away
Yeah.
at 4 a.m. Yeah,
And I've
Yeah.
tried to talk to them too, but it's them trying to talk to their staff about
Yeah.
stuff and
Yeah.
garbage in there and all that. But
dumpster gate. I told you guys.
it's
dumpster
never
gate.
fun. And we're a new subdivision there. Horizon Point's a new subdivision, so
It
it
is.
didn't exist up until a few years ago.
And just so you know, so the way the dumpsters work is you really, I mean, we run, that's the one thing that runs 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
It has
7 days
to,
a
I
week.
think,
The
yeah.
claw truck does not run on the weekends. It's Monday through Friday. But again, every week it hits all 250 miles of the city. So it drives and picks up, even on top of it, probably more because there's also alleys. However, the dumpsters, we run those folks 7 days a week. And if you have a dumpster, you can have it picked up 7 days a week. You can pick Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can pick, Tuesday. So I don't know what their schedule is. I don't know if, is it every day?
No, they're
4 days
a
probably?
week right now, yeah.
That's probably, so it really depends on how often, but regardless, even if it's only 1 day a week, I think the plastic dumpster might be an option because it butts up against that.
Might be a little-
And I'd love to get some feedback, so we'll check into that.
All right.
But your feedback's similar. So it's the same feeling of like having an idea or concern and you throw it into this black hole of like, did anything happen? And I had the same feeling. So I have a Google document of like things I'm working on that I follow up like, hey, what about
Yeah.
this thing that we talked about 2 months ago? Are we working on that? So I have, even for my own self, I haven't been able to solve the issue of like getting away from just like feeling like you're throwing ideas and things into this void that nothing, and it just kind of disappears. So I'd love to find a way to solve that. So I still haven't found it.
Yes, Leslie Fontaine.
Hey, Leslie.
I'm here about a couple of different things, but it's all the same subject. Years ago, when we had the charrettes, I attended many, many, many charrettes. And one of the things that came out, they asked concerns and all, one of the things that came out of our charrettes was lack of code enforcement. So I've been kind of monitoring code enforcement. I'm having a hard time, other than coming and looking at the bulletin board as to what is going on with code enforcement. I want to give some kudos to the city. I like the videos that they're putting out now, like the overgrowth, what we need to be doing, keeping things maintained. I think that's fabulous. I also think we're having a volunteer day, and I think we've gotten some of the churches and the organizations. I think they're going to Millville Cemetery to clean up Millville Cemetery. Hooray, that is great. That's wonderful. One of the things I'm wondering about is we have so many homes that are overgrown. It's sad because some of the people are older. They don't have the energy or the funds to get things cleaned up, but they're an eyesore. Is there any way that maybe we could get some volunteers, volunteer organizations, even the high school students that are looking for volunteer hours for their scholarships? And I'm not talking about cleaning vacant lots that are overgrown. I'm talking about mowing and trimming and that kind of thing. I noticed, we talk about code enforcement, and several weeks ago, the commission, there was an incident with the RVs, and the commission decided to relax code enforcement. Well, I'm wondering, once it's relaxed, is there any way since obviously the commission thought that was too strenuous, once it's relaxed, can that ordinance be put where, okay, let's start looking at this. If they have 3 RVs, if they have 2 boats, if they have work trailers and all, to start looking at that kind of thing. The other thing is Commissioner Granger brought up he wanted to do a list of vacant properties. I know there was some concerns. I know Ms. Lucas was concerned about properties in your ward. You don't want anybody losing their homes. I don't either. And there's a real problem with titles and all that with homes. Robbie was concerned about, from a realtor's point and all. At one point, you said you don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to embarrass anybody either. But having said that, I'm going to tell you about a conversation. I have a cousin who came, and he comes probably about once a year, and he said to me, "When are y'all going to clean up?"
Yeah.
And it hurt my feelings. I mean, I'm seeing some improvement, but not at the pace that I want to see. And when you talked about the DIB has a list of vacant buildings and all, and that was, maybe we can do that. Sometimes I feel like the city is more concerned about our commercial areas, and you leave us to be, I call it the tattletale system.
Yeah.
We have to call on our neighbors, and I think that's terrible.
Yeah.
I think it's awful.
I love to talk about that. So code enforcement's like, it's all about code compliance.
Thank you.
Yes. We want you to be compliant,
Yes.
not enforced. Same thing. It needs to come from citizens. Otherwise, it's the city telling us what to do. And so, carrot or stick. I would much rather see successful neighborhoods have these groups of like, we're the Cove beautification
Right.
team. And,
Right.
it comes from this friendly approach of we want to have a beautiful neighborhood. And then how
Right.
can we help you? Touching on because it can be used as a tool. Like, it's a very easy tool to be like, you're coming after me and taking
Right.
my stuff.
Right.
You're not helping me.
Right.
So one of the conversations we had was about property registration. I hate the idea of adding more to government, and I actually had a call with them yesterday. There's two components to their system. You register a property, they'll basically watch the Bay County court records looking for properties that fall into foreclosure, and then force the banks and these are out-of-town banks and overseas banks, to pay a fee so they have a local contact where we can say, you're not keeping up this foreclosed home that's
Right.
getting over, specifically foreclosed homes or ones that are in that process.
Right.
They charge a base rate of $120. You can do it semi-annually or annually, and then you can bump it up to whatever amount you want. And basically they told me, hey, based on the number of foreclosures, just specifically foreclosures that you have, these are people who are already out of their homes. If you're dealing with a bank, you're not taking money from someone in a terrible situation. They're left, they're gone.
Right.
And you can basically generate about $45,000 a year. So, to me, an interesting way to take that money, what I don't want to do is throw it again into the black hole of the general fund. It just
Right.
disappears.
Right.
Specifically, we took the money and earmarked it for people who are in code enforcement who just don't have the means to cut their grass. I don't want to be a lawn care service for
Right.
people who are like, I
Right.
don't want to cut my grass. But so you identify people who truly need help, because I don't think anyone on the commission or anyone in the public would want to say, we should take someone's property who can't afford a new roof.
No.
So how do we help them?
That's right.
I'd love to see something like that. So in my head, the vacant property thing is a much harder one to narrow it down to. But the ones that are in foreclosure, using that mechanism to then help people is interesting discussion to be had. And then you touched on volunteerism. It goes back into tracking citizens and what they want to be involved in. I'd love to see a volunteer coordinator who just tracks people who are like, you know what, I love this park, or I want to volunteer at these type of things. Because volunteerism is
It's
truly a
huge.
KPI of success in
huge.
communities of
Yeah.
like, that's when you feel like you're involved and you're there in your parks and you feel like you have ownership of
Some
the little.
skin in the
Yeah,
game.
totally.
Some skin in the game.
I'd love to see that. And
So we've got two resources.
Yeah.
Donna Pilson, Executive Director of Rebuild Bay, is listening in.
Right.
She just sent a text that says Rebuild Bay can help. Could the city help with consumable supplies? The United Way
See, that's great.
United Way already has a volunteer system.
Cool. Oh, there you
that
go.
the nonprofits are using. And so getting a connection with our nonprofits to help in this regard,
Right.
I think is something that we can move forward on.
And there's so many people that want to help. They don't know what to do.
Just to coordinate,
Nobody wants
yeah.
to report their neighbor and say.
Yeah,
that-
there has to be a source
That is
too.
a horrible, in my opinion, that's a horrible system.
Yes.
And I will say this, I went to the last the code compliance meeting, whatever you want to call it, and Hawks Nest was on
You
it.
said you loved it.
No, that was way before I got
I got the email.
I want to call it neighborhood beautification. That's what I
Yeah.
want to call it.
that.
Well, I don't really care what you call it. I just want to get
I want the
things.
tie-dyed shirts too. It looks
I want to
friendly.
get things
Yeah.
cleaned up. And like I said, one of the good things, when I went to that last hearing, somebody got the ball rolling on Hawks Nest, which is wonderful because until I went to that meeting, it was an eyesore, but I didn't realize how bad and what all was going on. So we just need to kind of get the ball rolling. And like I said, we've got volunteers after the hurricane. I cleaned up myself Cove Boulevard from Cherry Street to Bunkers Cove Road. I picked up every board. I did all of that. People will help. And when Mark McQueen was here, something that he did that I thought was a great idea, and I know it sounds silly, but they kind of had work days, and we were able to, our work went towards paying for cleanup for the city. Do you remember that?
There was something
Do you
like that,
remember?
where it was like you
Our
counted
hours,
hours.
we gave our
and then we have
hours,
sent
and
them
then the
somewhere,
state or the
and
federal
something,
government
yeah.
paid us
I'm
back.
not aware of that.
That was post-Hurricane Michael, I believe.
that was
Yes.
probably
Part of
tied to
FEMA.
Yeah.
And a silly thing that seems like a nothing, but we had a ball afterwards. They sent the ice cream truck around. And then when you got finished, you got an ice cream cone. How hard
We'll
is
work
that,
for ice
you know?
cream.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
A lot of cities are moving to Memphis. They have a lot of their premier parks, what they call
Yeah.
them, run by nonprofits because people would rather donate and volunteer for
Yes.
a nonprofit than the city. Because it's
yeah.
like, I already give you money. Just,
Yeah.
Right.
So you do get a little more love for the local nonprofits.
So I do want to add a few things, and again, I love feedback is great, but there's also always a practical side to
Sure.
running an organization, and I feel
Sure.
like sometimes I have to be Debbie Downer a little bit
Yeah.
and say, so we can't just let non-city employees, especially minors, on our
Right.
equipment. Our
Right.
insurance folks and HR, in fact, Vicky's probably like, don't you dare suggest that,
Yeah.
Hayes. It's a no-go with that.
Yeah.
So there's very limitation, and a lot of people don't have the type of equipment they need to kind of help maintain it.
Right.
Taking off my city manager, I just put it on my citizen hat. I really want to see, I think churches
Yes.
need to start getting more involved in some of these where, if you might have elderly residents
Yes.
that maybe don't have family and they need help with some of their property. I did change, that's one of the first things I did is I initiated changing from code enforcement to code compliance. That was some feedback that I got. We do want to, we want to help people get into
Yeah.
compliance, and we got away from
Right.
dressing more like law enforcement. They are in khakis and nicer polos and all that. That
Wearing
being
green now.
that being said, they get fussed at every week for either going out to try to make
Right.
someone clean up or not doing enough. It is, and so I feel bad for those guys and gals because it is a tough job.
Yeah.
And the state changed the law where you can't report it
I
anonymously.
know. That's why, like I said, that's why
Yeah.
I would like to move for, and when I say what I'm going to say, I don't mean to be ugly, but I'm not a code enforcement, code
Yeah.
compliance officer.
You want to be?
So, no, I don't. If you want to hire me to go around and give you some addresses, but I think, like I said, and you're absolutely right, we cannot do that anonymously. And
Yeah.
quite frankly,
But the city can. I mean, so I want to be clear though. Our guys do go out, not necessarily on Sundays,
Yeah.
but they do go out on Saturday to kind
Right.
of see if there's unpermitted work or.
Right.
And our code enforcement guys aren't just sitting at their
no, I
desks.
know they're not.
Waiting for reports. They're
I
out there
totally
seeing
understand
it.
that.
But at the end of the day though, I think that as a community, like to some degree, and I want us to be fussed at when we need to be fussed
Yeah.
at, but we also need to be defended. If someone's like, I can't believe code enforcement, we need y'all to be like,
Yeah.
look at your yard.
Exactly. Exactly.
The city is
Yeah.
right. You need to
Yes.
fix your yard up.
Yes.
Do you need help?
Yes.
And then here's some resources,
Yes.
but
But that may
yeah.
be, Jonathan, that may be something that the city has not, y'all have not communicated that. And if we can get some of these volunteers up to say, there's help out there. We're going to cite you because your house is not in compliance, but we have help for you and here they are. And this is what you can call, you can call this person and come get you help.
Yeah.
Because honestly, we are losing people to some of the other areas, and I'm going to use Sweet Bay for an example. I love Sweet Bay. I think it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful. But we're losing people to Sweet Bay because of lack of code enforcement. And that's one of the reasons, not all the reasons, but that
They
is
are
my
they are an
concern.
HOA, so that
I know
that
they are,
bar is set
but
even
you don't
higher.
have to be an HOA. You have your codes on the book.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, the city has got to help the citizens where I don't have a neighbor next to me that their house is horrible and I have a bad relationship with my neighbor. I shouldn't have to do that. That, to me, should be code enforcement, code compliance.
Yeah, but on the same token, so specifically talking about boats in front yards, there's an interesting conversation to be had, and you can have it for hours, which is like, if the neighborhood is willing to accept boat trailers in yards, maybe the code should be changed. Otherwise, the
Well,
city's
it
just
was
going around,
changed.
going after everybody.
but it was
you know?
changed.
It
Y'all
was, and that's a
changed it.
great point of like, if the city had gone after every
Yeah,
single boat.
and
in
I'm,
its yard,
you know what, I don't like
Right.
it, that's not what I would have done, but that is what y'all decided.
Yeah.
So now we're at one
Right.
in the front yard.
Yeah.
So what about the 2 and 3? What about
Sure.
the work trailer and the, you know?
It goes back to the citizens need to back up the city with support on things that we're pushing on, or support changing the thing. If you want boat trailers in yards, that's fine too. It's whatever the community wants. But there's never just the right amount of things.
Right.
Right. Like, ooh, code enforcement, they're just the right amount of strict. Because
Yeah.
you're either too strict in some people's eyes or you're not doing enough.
So
it's like ice cream, man. I never eat just the amount of ice cream.
Yes.
So we've got resources, right?
Yes.
We've got United Way, they have a whole volunteer
Yeah.
system.
Yes.
We've got Rebuild Bay, Tool Bank that
Yes.
can loan out tools.
Yes.
And city resources. And so working together.
That's right.
We can coordinate some better stuff. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see a handout from code compliance that shows all the resource. I want less verbal communication in general, especially at code enforcement, because it is the hard, you're walking on someone's property, they're like, who are you? And it's all verbal, and verbal, I'd much rather say, here's a handout of all the resources to help you. I'll check back in a few weeks or a month or something.
And I would look, I'm sorry.
If it's all clear.
I'm sorry, you have to be near the mic, only because we're online and
Can you
people
still
can't hear you.
stand
Yeah, yeah, but please come back to the mic though. Yeah.
What I was going to say is, I don't remember what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Well, Leslie, let me say one thing while you're maybe thinking.
Yeah.
So.
You can come back up to the mic.
Yeah. So the 1.2 I think that's important to notice about code enforcement or code compliance is they're not law enforcement. So if there's something going on, they're not going to show up like the police and immediately put a stop
Right.
to it.
Sure.
That's not how code compliance operates. It's not that same level of like law enforcement. It's more like, hey, just want to let you know, either we've received this complaint or the city and, in our regular monitoring of our city has noticed this as a problem. Here's the code, here's why, and they would usually get a communication. And, we do that. So we don't necessarily through a pamphlet, but it's a letter.
Okay,
But
but-
we will do that. And so, but I just want to know that, so if you see an issue, it's, typically they're going to be given a few months.
Right, sure.
To make it right. And then if they don't respond.
Sure.
Then that's potentially brought to the magistrate
Sure.
to be addressed.
And another thing that and here I go telling you how to do your job. Another thing that I really like are those videos. And one of the videos I would love for y'all to create is one about unsheltered storage. We have people that have front yards in piles and piles and piles of stuff in their front yards. And from what I understand from reading your code, that's unsheltered storage.
Right.
The other thing is your new code about your one RV or one boat or whatever. Put that video out there so people know, oh, I can't have a boat and a trailer and, we can't have all this in our front yard. We can have one from what the new code says.
One recreational vehicle, an RV or a boat.
Yes, explain it, because people don't know. And we've been so lax on enforcing any of it that if we get these videos out, maybe they'll say, oh, you know what? I got a husband that fishes and hunts and all that, and he's got too much out in the front yard. So, and I'm not trying to fuss. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Well, you do it. You will though.
Yeah, I am.
You can't tell me what to do with my property.
Can we film the video in front of Tim's carport, it sounds like maybe?
Actually, you can come to my house and film my front yard. I'm a good example of doing what I'm supposed to do. I would love for you to do that.
Thank you, Leslie.
But and like I said, I try not to fuss, but sometimes, and after going to that code hearing and the Halloween spirit Halloween thing that the city had to make a correction on about the code enforcement, that kind of got me going. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
I think Whitney was trying to speak too. You skipped Whitney to Mr. Conte.
Just once a month, one of your responses to less than 25 minutes for
Oh.
one thing, so we can actually get through it.
Okay, well, I'm happy to stay longer.
Yeah.
Mine is going to be super quick. I'm not complaining about anything. My name is Whitney Mims, or Dosher Mims, whatever. I grew up here. I am here to talk about something that I love in a place that I now work. Jinx Middle School is celebrating her 75th birthday this year. And I just was going to come and let the commission know of some things that are going on. And I wanted to tell y'all 10 interesting things about Jinx real quick. Jinx is the oldest junior high / middle school in Panama City and Bay County. It was founded in 1950 and built on land donated by Jinx Lumber Company, but it was named after the man who was an educator named C.L. Jinx. The E and the I are important. In 1953, Tyndall Air Force Base pilot Second Lieutenant Edwin Gorbett lost his life after his plane suffered failure in an attempt to save Jinx Junior High students. He stayed with his plane to steer it away from the school and towards St. Andrews Bay. It ended up crashing or exploding over where the Garden Club is now. One of the biggest things, experiencing desegregation. At one time, Jinx was an all-white school. It is now proudly almost evenly split, 33% white, 33% black, and 33% Latino. At one time, Jinx Middle School was home to the Bay County Gifted Program. Gifted elementary students from all over Bay County were bused 1 day per week from their home elementary school to work with teachers in accelerated classes. This program became a precursor to programs like Cambridge Pre-ACE, which we lead into our feeder school ACE, which is offered at Bay High School. Rebuilding and resiliency after Hurricane Michael. Our gym was destroyed, and it is now a beautiful example of rebuilding Bay County. Distance learning during the pandemic. You just can't say enough about the educators, both at Jinx and all over Bay County, the world, wherever. That was a tough time for everybody. Now, one of my personal favorites, Jinx happens to have multiple county football championships. And I'm proud to say my son is the center at Jinx right now. We also were part of the start of several state and local officials. Coach McKinney,
Yeah.
Sue McKinney, has been there over 50 years.
Years, yeah.
And we're so proud and thankful to have her and her knowledge during this time, especially she's a walking history book. So she will hand me something to look at or take. You're not going to lose it. No, ma'am. And Jinx Middle School is truly a living heritage. The celebration of its 75th year is engaging students, alumni, and neighbors in honoring the school's traditions and renewing its mission for the next generation. I know it's last minute invitation, but we wanted to give the city commission invitations to our little thing that we're having. We're having an alumni tailgate when we play Surfside. It's not our biggest competitor. Unfortunately, because of a storm, Mowat was canceled, so we couldn't play them. And our other biggest is this Tuesday. It's at Rudd, so if you want to go see the Hornets versus the Rams, it'll be over, I think, they call that Champlain, I think. No. Anyway, it's at Rutherford this year. And so we'll be driving down 11th Street for the Battle of 11th Street later this week. But anyway, I thank you for your time. Look, please follow. I mean, not just them, but anyone here is welcome to follow our Facebook page. We try to keep up with social media. Our media specialist, Brock, has been doing a great job putting some history and interesting things so we're all learning about the past, and you don't know where you're going if you can't remember where you've been.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And
Tell me your name again.
Whitney Dosher Mims.
Okay. So as a Jinx alumnus, thank you
You're very welcome.
coming
and
to
thank
share
you
this.
for your support. My son also plays for Glenwood, which and I've got to run off because he's got a 10 o'clock game. So I thank you for letting me
Thank you.
bust up.
My
through
parents
there.
went to Jinx Junior High School. Thank you. I didn't. We didn't.
So did mine. Yep, I'll take care of this.
Thank you again.
That's not to say I went to Jenks with their parents.
I have been spending the last several weeks, I'm the bookkeeper, so I don't face students on a regular basis, so they kind of gave me this assignment, but I have a deep background in not-for-profits. I've been on the ASAP board, I've junior leagued all over and all the things, so this was really up my alley, and they were kind enough to let me just go for it and organizing some of these things, but I've spent countless, we have, if you have free time and you are interested, we'll scan you in and you're welcome to come look through the 75 years of yearbooks we have. So if you want to
Yeah.
Oh, my.
get after somebody, there's some real gorgeous pictures. Mine includes a battle with Aquanet,
Yes.
big hair, don't care, higher the banks, closer to God.
Yeah.
So all the awful middle school pictures are there for your purview if you like. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Linda. Yes, sir, Mr. Dees.
Lucky Dees. Thank
His
y'all.
real name is Lucky, too.
Yes, it
How
is.
cool is that?
So I got just a few questions. The money that's set aside for Joe Moody Harris, does that include the Dempsey J. Barron Nature Overlook too?
It just gives all the questions.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That includes that?
Yeah, just give us all the questions. We'll answer at one
Okay.
time. Yes, sir.
Millville Christmas Parade,
Yeah.
why can't we have it? It used to be one of the best parades around. And kudos to the new sign for Millville.
Yeah.
Now we just need more beautification along the corridor and more businesses and more police patrol to get them all there. And why can't we put an amphitheater down there where the marina was?
We got one.
I think he means this marina.
Oh, this
We
one.
did put one in Millville.
We didn't.
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking about down here where the Civic Center was.
Yeah.
Why can't we put an amphitheater there? That would draw people there, and you could have concerts there or anything there, like over Lynn Haven, across the bridge on the beach. There on their amphitheaters during the summer, one night a week they have local talent come in and sing. So why can't we do that?
I agree. Is that our question?
Those all the questions?
That's it.
All right.
Awesome. Go for it, Jonathan.
So I don't know specifically if it involves the overlook. I don't know if that's part of or separate, but it is about a $1.2, $1.3 million grant. The city has to do 50%, and we got 50% matched, and we're so grateful that was signed about a week and a half ago. We thought that it might not come to fruition, that grant, but I do know that it will involve the trails, redoing those, exercise equipment, restrooms. But, you know, even if we don't have particular grant money, we will use city resources and Parks and Rec resources to fix up the overlook. The Millville Christmas Parade, I know that the people that, and I probably need to get my memory refreshed a little bit, but I know that the two people that generally kind of put it on had some health challenges the last year. And then there was also some challenges with, I think, getting the kids there from, with Bay District schools and all of that. I mean, the city, there was an expense to the city, with time and with candy. And I mean, we were fine doing that. But I know that the people that, there were two ladies, and I know one of the ladies had some health challenges, and then I believe the husband of one of the other ladies had some health challenges, and they weren't able to kind of help put it together and coordinate and all of that. So, the city is happy to do it. I would get up in a bucket truck dressed as an elf, and I enjoyed that a few times. But it wasn't the city that nixed that parade. As far as the amphitheater, that is an option that's been floated on the downtown marina, specifically where the Civic Center was. There's renderings out there, 6 or 7 different renderings of just general concepts. In fact, there's a couple more now that are out there, and I think maybe 3 of them include an amphitheater there. But that'll be a decision for the commission to make in coordination with the St. Joe Company and with with City Marina Partners if we do get to an agreement with them. So that will be driven by the elected officials. So I will let the mayor and the commissioners
and
speak to
adding,
that.
I bet you Chris's parade, $30,000, $40,000 of police and
It's
time.
pretty expensive, yeah.
And so much of this job is like every idea is awesome. Like I want amphitheaters and beautiful, but we have to pick and choose what we do. And a lot of the amphitheaters, unless you can ticket them and then have someone bring in a band and sell drinks, it's a loss. Like for us to have a concert in the park in Millville, between paying the artist $1,000, coordinating them, promoting it, there's $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for a concert, unless citizens want to start volunteering their time to organize those things. And that's why citizens are so important, and volunteerism is. Otherwise, it costs lots of money for us to host the free concerts, which we all want. I love free concerts in every park. We have to choose how we spend money, and if the citizens want concerts in every park, we'll try to figure out a way to do it. But it's always a this or that. Or we say, or higher taxes.
There's a greater spirit and willingness to do that now than there were.
Ma'am, there's actually folks in line behind you. Yeah. It's okay.
Than there were in times past. And so we're seeing a great effort now between the city and nonprofits and churches to add some of these quality of life opportunities.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Derek Thomas.
Thanks.
Got a few different things about your. I was fortunate enough when I moved into my house that it was designed to handle hurricanes and the water that came with that. And then that all changed. You've passed an ordinance for bagging your leaf debris, but you haven't passed an ordinance saying that if you violate Florida civil code and flood somebody else's property and do actual physical damage to their property, that should not require the owner, who's maybe a retired Navy veteran living on a fixed income, to go out and spend $30,000 to go to court, if you know that that's not right. Also, building a house on top of a wetland isn't right, and you shouldn't be allowing that either, but you are. And the code enforcement, I tried to get the record of how many people filed complaints about that. They would not show me the complaints filed against that property. They would not show me the name of the people filing complaints against the other property. So code enforcement in the past was used by developers to free up land, and they would target neighborhoods and go after them. So you need records that show which people are doing that, how many times are they doing it. If they're doing it 50, 60 times on properties that they're buying, that should be part of the public record. When it comes to the hurricanes, in Tampa, they do provide people, landscapers, to go and dump their stuff, and they mulch it, and then the landscapers take the mulch. It provides a central location where people can do that. They don't have to just dump it on the side of the road. After the hurricane, you did have central locations to dump stuff, but it was required that you have to be a contractor. You shouldn't have to hire a contractor to just haul out the debris. If you want to pay somebody to haul out the debris, just haul it out and dump it in the truck and then dump it in a central location. You got to give people that option. It would save money. But really, what I came in to talk to today is about the marina. That's something that I feel pretty strongly about, that this should not be, if it's 17 million, it should not be a 100-year lease. He said, the marina guy doing it said that he could do it for 17 million. I don't know that that's possible. I know that you donated 15 and you wouldn't have had to pay for the permits or anything else. But now you spend $100,000 or $47,500, and then the previous study, which I've also requested multiple times, I haven't gotten. So together, the two of them, you spent $100,000 looking at it. I would like to know why you didn't go in there and ask them to look at the rate of return, the rent that you're charging these people. I mean, for the St. Andrews, they're making 1.7 million and giving the city 43. And if it was just 5% for the downtown and they're making 2 million, stuff, that would be more. But now you're doing it with breaking it up into multiple different projects. Each one has a cap where you don't pay anything unless you're making more than 560,000. You're going to wind up with like the hotel and the restaurant. The hotel's paying 10,000, the restaurant's paying 40,000 a year. That's nothing. You've already taken out 20.9 million for both marinas to do the bulkheads. And if you do a 100-year lease with these people, you're going to have to go in there and put in another bulkhead. And you have no source of revenue other than taxes, when together the marina should be producing $4 million a year. If you were charging decent rent on that, you could at least pay off the 20.9 million that you have and not be a burden on the citizens. That's your leading asset. If you were Monopoly, they showed a Monopoly game down at the library that was for Panama City Beach, But if it was Panama City, the boardwalk and Park Place would be the two marinas. So you're giving away the most expensive pieces of land, the things guaranteed to make money no matter what you put there, and you're not charging any rent on them. And then if it was a 30-year lease, it would be bad that we're stuck with this, but at least you'd have the chance, in our lifetimes to do something else with this. But to give somebody a 75-year lease where they pay nothing for the first 7 years until they've collected $10 million, if they can collect $10 million in profit over 7 years, then there should be no reason to give them anything more than a 30-year lease.
Thank you. We're going to have a lot more meetings about the marinas I think this fall, there are going to be a whole bunch of them. It's one of the most confusing things I've ever been through in my life. FEMA is like a tornado of words and acronyms. If you send me an email related to, you mentioned early on in the conversation about a ordinance about suing someone who causes damage to your property through flood, I'm happy to research it. But shoot me an email so I can see what other cities have done. Most of my research is around.
It came in with 5 feet on either side of the property line, so there was a space there for the water to collect.
Yeah, just shoot me an email of other cities or give me something I can search. I don't know how to search for it yet, and I'm happy to do research on it.
Okay, I'll try to do that. I mean, my complaint that I filed against them, again, wasn't recorded.
Yeah.
But the property right next door had a case open up against the property across the street had a case open, and what they were doing was actually causing physical damage. But I mean, I've been trying for years to get that resolved. I think for the discussion for the public, for the marina specifically, you have to let the public know about it.
Sure.
And I know with St. Andrews, people got excited when they said they're going to build a hotel there. And they showed up and they said, we only found out about this on Friday.
Yeah.
And now you're going to vote on it. And this last one, you gave the public nothing. The fact that they're going to put businesses with apartments on top of them on the dock, that means no parking for the people that live here. And this company is the same company that did the St. Andrews Marina. So for over 4 months, they blocked all of the trailer spaces when there was no reason. They could have staged the stuff somewhere else. And when they weren't using it, they didn't need to stop people from using the spaces. They used for over 3 months just to store one of their boats. During the same time that we were restricting people storing their boats on their property. And you're letting these people just completely run amok over it. And now, without much, I don't think that the public has fully understood what you're contemplating doing with these people, and more specifically, the length of the lease.
Yeah.
That's going to be a real problem for the next generation, and no way to make the money back. And there's no reason, if they're just doing the marina, for them to have a huge lease.
Yeah,
And I appreciate you having these opportunities, but you got to have either more meetings per month, or allow people to speak at the Tuesday meetings, or, make it longer.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great point to make. Even like unpacking a marina discussion is like an hours, and that's why we're gonna have individual meetings on those topics, because it's hard not to answer a question and then be like, sorry, we'll hold another meeting on it. So it's tough knowing how long to answer things. So we have good intentions, though. Yes, sir.
Tim Fontaine, I'll make mine brief.
No, you won't. Mr. Fontaine, you don't make anything brief.
I want to applaud the city for the infrastructure direction that we've been working towards, and that's replacing all this failed infrastructure. And the number that I got from Mark McQueen that's stuck in my brain that needs to be shared with everybody in the city is, when we've started this infrastructure work, for every 1 inch of rain that fell on the watershed of the sewer lines that fed the Millville treatment plant, we picked up an additional 1 million gallons to treat, which demonstrates how poor our infrastructure is. After working, and understand recently that it's a better number with the work we've already done. So my question is, and Jonathan already knows the question, is where are we with the hazard mitigation grant program for the critical lift station?
So that's
change.
Yep, that's 11 lift stations, and it's all of them are 100% designed. This includes lift station 81, which is there by the yacht club. This includes lift station number 45, which is on St. Andrew Bay on Beach Drive. It also includes lift station number 16, which has a manhole in the water over in St. Andrews. All 100% designed, they're all pending FEMA review through the Department of Emergency Management in Tallahassee. So
No change.
we expect to hear back from them at any time. We recently kind of inquired about it through Representative Griffith's office and Senator Trumbull's office, and they're in review, but it's FEMA. FEMA and DEM together are basically reviewing those plans, and as soon as they kind of give us the go-ahead, we're ready to go. So
Me too.
I know. But the key is they're all designed, they're all at 100%. They're just in the review process with FEMA.
All right, well,
So-
thank you,
Yeah.
like I said, I have empathy for the infrastructure work after working at a facility that
Yeah.
was built in 1930, so I understand the problems.
I
You
know.
dig a hole in what
Yeah.
you're gonna find.
Summer Masloom, our city utilities engineer, she's already kind of started penciling out kind of like how to bid them out. So we're at that point, kind of doing some pre-work on the bid documents, and because there's 11 of them, so we're not just going to bid them all out at once. We'll probably break them into like maybe 2 or 3 per, kind of per bid per project. For example, lift station 45 and lift station 47. That's the one that's right there on Beach Drive, and then the one that's in someone's backyard on Wood Avenue. We're going to combine those into one and put them on the city's property, like maybe that southwest corner of the Bay Memorial Park. As part of that project, we're looking at coming in there and kind of milling and resurfacing Garden Club Drive, because we've made a big investment there, because we're also going to be having to relocate a sewer main. So it makes sense like for those to be coupled together. So we're already doing that. We're already, kind of moving that, getting some preliminary work done on the bid documents. So I'd love for those to go out to bid. My hope would be before the holidays for sure.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Santa will come early for you.
Yes.
New lift station.
Keep
Yeah.
hope alive.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, or good morning, actually. Name's Matt Mitchell.
Hey, Matt.
You guys did a little water project over there at Kings Point, where you ran a whole bunch of water lines. You're like phase 1, phase 2, stuff like that. My question for you guys, how many people actually signed up to hook up? How many hookups have you guys done in your first 2 phases that you've actually completed?
I'd have to check that number.
I would personally, if I have to make a FOIA request, make this a verbal one right now.
Yeah.
I want to know how many were actually signed up to hook up, because you guys spend a lot of money for this, but I don't think anybody's paying for it. And I think the only reason you guys were doing it was because of the 10 acres down at the end of 27th Street that now is being brought up and built up because you guys have already annexed that area. But nobody else on the street wants you out there. So just would like to know what's going on.
So thanks for asking that. I think, I think there's some misunderstanding on the history of this. This was a state-initiated project. So the state from Pensacola to Key West has generally advanced through the Department of Environmental Protection a desire to get
Well, it was interesting that the EPA, the state EPA actually just
the
handed
DEP.
over the permissions for all septic systems to the Department of Health. Really? I mean, this is kind of weird stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
It's all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we want to get rid of everybody's septic out there. And it's like, I like my well water. I like my septic. I ain't coming in on you guys.
Yeah, so
And I heard this young lady here wanting code enforcement. I know I have a boat in my front yard, and quite honestly, my yard's not the greatest in the world, and I don't need a busybody telling me how I need to use my yard. So
Yeah, so if I could finish those. So again, I can't speak for the state. I'm not going to speak for the DEP. I just know that collectively, they have made a decision, a policy decision out of Tallahassee to get septic tanks off of coastal communities, not just here in Bay County, but from Pensacola all the way to Key West. So thankfully, they're actually coming in with this particular funding. This was called for those who don't know, it's septic to sewer. And because they want to get septic tanks, and the day will come, I'm just going to be honest with you, because they've already communicated this to us, they will not issue any new permits for new septic tanks in coastal communities. Maybe in some of the rural communities, yes, but not along the coast. coastal. So they gave us money, and we did break it into 3 phases in the Pretty Bayou and Kings Point area to come in and to put city sewer and city water lines. Now, what I have done is we're not requiring annexation. So I know that in the past, the city has required annexation to get any type of city utilities, water, sewer. We're not requiring that.
No, that was what was told to us, was there was an annexation
but that
request with a payment, and then, you guys have no idea what it costs to abandon a septic system, have it crushed in, filled in, and validated, and then have to put a lift station in afterwards to get my new sewer going to your guys' system, even actually working. So you're talking, for me, it'd be about $100,000.
Yeah.
In all. And, quite honestly, Bay County worth another $100,000 for me. I'm out as soon as I can get out of here. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you want the city to do. So
I'm just curious. I really want to know who signed up. Because quite honestly, you guys came through, you tore up the yards, you tore up my driveway. The concrete relay was done decently, but it was only because I was standing out there watching and making sure it was done properly. So I just, it's one of these things where you guys own the football. Tell me how far you got as far as the yardage you made with it. So.
Well, again, I want to be clear. This was a state-directed project. And I don't believe there's been a lot that have hooked up, but the day will come, I believe, based on everything I've heard, where the state's not going to really give that option. And so we are working on, you said lift station, but it's really kind of like a smaller grinder pump. Yes, in order to push all of the wastewater coming out of a home to the city sewer system.
Well, quite honestly, if you do proper septic maintenance, a septic system should last over 100 years. So
I'll take you at your word on that, sir.
I take care of my septic system very well.
I think what you're hearing is the city's not trying. I'm not in favor. I had a septic. I lived in Robinson Bayou Island on West 33rd Street, unincorporated Bay County. Septic. I think I had city water though. I didn't have a pump, and I like the septic tank.
Well, those are our fire hydrants back.
It didn't cause me any issues. I don't know environmentally if it did.
That's another interesting thing, is because the fire hydrants out there you guys do own, it's now growing over with weeds on the concrete that you actually had laying out over there. So I would expect probably within the next year the concrete will start breaking up because of the weeds and the stuff that's around that. So.
Awesome. Make sure we have his contact information for
I don't know what concrete. We didn't put any sidewalks in over there.
You put in fire hydrants, and then you laid concrete around those fire hydrants.
I'm not aware of that. I have to look
if you get that, do we have your address?
Don't do that unless
contact
there's a
information for the
sidewalk.
FOIA request?
So.
First house on 27th Street, 2206.
2206. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just 2 more things.
Yes, sir.
On the lawn care and all that, there's an organization called Youth Alliance
Matters.
That they have kids that go around and cut people's yards for free. They all the time hunting yards. So it's for free. And if the person decides to make a donation, that's up to them. Craft Avenue. Big trucks. You asked me for names of the big trucks. R&L Carriers, SiI, Southeastern, AAA Cooper. That road's not designed for the big trucks.
Yeah.
There should be a weight limit on there.
Yeah.
Not saying, your little regular delivery trucks, but big semi trucks.
Yeah.
That infrastructure is not designed. They gonna keep on and
Sure.
they gonna crush everything under there.
We had a citizen, there was a lady on the 600 block of Craft Avenue that had her utility pole hit, and her name is Augusta. And so we're doing a traffic study on the speeds of that road, of potentially lowering it down.
I imagine they're going back there.
Her pole's been hit twice in 5 years.
I imagine they're
It's
going to
at
Eastern.
25,
Yeah.
and they fly through there like there's no tomorrow. And I'm waiting on somebody's gonna come from the north part and get there to 98 Fifth Avenue and forget there's a stop sign, and whenever they hit that main stretch, they gonna get hit twice, one coming from the east, one coming from the west.
Yeah.
It's a hazard.
Agreed. Thank you for the feedback. We passed it to PCPD. I believe they're doing a study or.
Somewhere on Craft Avenue, yeah.
Yeah,
I
600
know it's probably folks going back there like cut through the Eastern Ship Belt.
Well, that and there's a Florida Rubber Hose entire
Yeah,
warehouse back
kinda
there
cut through
too.
there, yeah.
507 mine.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to let people know that Panama City has an app. The only reason I know we have an app is because the maintenance department got tired of me going down there to their office and complaining at the office, and they told me about the app where you can take pictures of stuff and record what's going on. So maybe everybody didn't know, so I'm just letting people know.
See Click Fix, I believe it's called, isn't it?
That's internal. It's Panama City. So
Perfect. Thank you.
we're actually looking at, that's a pretty big expense. We're actually looking at trying to rely more on like text messaging. So we'll probably, maybe as we get into calendar year 2026, move away from that and just create like a number where you can take a picture and just text it right to us, and then it gets fed into our internal work system.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Anyone
Yeah.
else? Final call. Yes, sir.
Derek Thomas. After Hurricane Michael, I noticed you sent a truck out with a whole bed full of cones. And you went out and put cones down where all the trash was. And then I had to go around on my bike and pick up the trash and move it off the side of the road so that people wouldn't have to drive around it. If you're going to already send out a truck filled with cones, and you have a trailer too, don't fill up the trailer with cones. Have it be part of the people's job to pick up the stuff out of the road and not just mark it and then walk away. Also, after people putting out the trash, it blocks all the sidewalks, and then everybody's in the road and stuff like that. So I think, look at that and then cut the branches off of the trees and haul the trunk of the tree out to the road instead of driving heavy machinery into a wetland and then getting stuck and then just tearing up everything. I know you get paid by the ton, but be more respectful to the environment.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. 10:10, wrapping up now. And you have my email address, abranch@panamacity.gov, or better yet, jhayes@panamacity.gov. Thanks for coming, everybody. And there's donuts left over.
Yep, take a donut home.
Yes, please do.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.